about Justice Department stories and Justice Department reporting and Barr stories from Trump stories. But this is a Trump story. And William Barr was asked at the end of July about the election and about ballots. And I want to play some of that exchange with Congressman Greg Stanton and talk about his role as really a wingman in Trump's efforts to go to war against an election that hasn't happened yet. Let's watch.
Mr. Barr, the president has suggested that only votes counted on Election Day should be what matters, meaning that if a voter casts a legal ballot on or before Election Day, but that ballot is not counted on Election Day, it shouldn't count at all. So I want to ask you again about your commitment to ensuring that every vote is counted. If, in this upcoming November election, the president asks you to intervene and try to stop states from counting legal ballots after Election Day, will you do the right thing and refuse? Yes or no?
I will follow the law.
You won't say no, sir?
I'll follow the law.
It's very disappointing.
If a state has a law that says it has to be cast on Election Day, that's the law.
Will you commit to making sure the Department of Justice does not get involved in a contested election? Yes or no?
I will follow the law.
So it would appear that we have an Attorney General, Devlin, who's on the record as not coming out and saying that voting twice in North Carolina is illegal, as the governor of North Carolina said after Donald Trump called for his supporters 2 times to commit felony voter fraud. And an Attorney General right now, as we sit here 48 days out from the election, who will not say that he will allow for legal ballots to be counted, which your newspaper and the New York Times and every paper of record is reporting that because of the coronavirus pandemic, some of that mail-in vote may need to be counted after Election Day.
Right. And obviously how the Justice Department approaches what could be a very complicated and very messy vote counting process is incredibly important. And I think what you see in that clip, and the reason why Democrats are so anxious about this, is that Barr isn't promising really anything that they want to hear. He also hasn't promised that, that he won't issue some version of Durham findings before the election, which a lot of Democrats find to be, essentially a form of domestic interference with the election, akin to what happened in 2016. So, I think Barr is determined not to have any daylight between him and the president on some of these issues involving the election that the president cares a great deal about. When intelligence officials say they see no evidence of or no threat from foreign actors making mock ballots or mailing in mock ballots, Barr insists that's still possible. But that's because the president insists. So there is this tension and there is this distrust, and I think that distrust is going to stay with us and if anything, intensify between now and Election Day.
Matt Miller, Devlin's putting it diplomatically, but we have a truther. I mean, the Attorney General doesn't believe the set of facts as presented by the ODNI or the current FBI director today on Russia's role and how it's different from what China and Iran and other countries are doing. And we have a lawless Attorney General who won't say that it's illegal to vote twice and who won't say that ballots will be counted. I mean, you tweeted, Matt Miller, this: the nightmare scenario I can't stop considering. If Barr wanted to prosecute a local mayor over a policy dispute, what's he going to do on November 5th when local elections officials are still counting votes and Trump says it should stop?
Yeah, this really is the thing that as I said in that tweet, is a nightmare scenario, at least for me. Look, Bill Barr has kind of an apocalyptic view of this election. He said in a recent interview that if Donald Trump isn't reelected, that the United States will be taken over by socialism. Again, something the Attorney General should not be weighing in on at all, the outcome of an election. And he has these authoritarian tendencies that you see in these reports that he wanted to prosecute the mayors of Seattle and the mayors of Portland over what are essentially policy differences. And when you combine that with his belief in these conspiracy theories that mail-in balloting is full of fraud, which it's not, and his refusal to commit to Congress not to intervene in the election, it worries me that in the day after the election or a couple days after the election, if the balloting is close or if Trump is ahead, but the voting or the counting is still going on, but the president declares that he's won, Bill Barr declares that the election is over, and he does something no Justice Department has ever done and sends federal attorneys into court to try to stop the counting, or in the real nightmare scenario that he sends federal law enforcement agents in to actually try to seize ballots. And look, I know that sounds paranoid, but if you think there's a scenario that is too extreme for Bill Barr and Donald Trump to try to hold on to power, I would suggest you haven't been paying close enough attention lately.
I would agree with you. I want to end with the human beings. Neil Katyal, behind a sideswipe, an effort to smear the reputations of Mr. Dreeben and all career prosecutors, are men and women who get up and I think in this day and age, a lot of them have to go in to work. Some of them have tested positive for COVID. A lot of them would like to tell their stories to people like Devlin and others, but they're terrified because the other side of what the Justice Department is doing is an extraordinary crackdown on leak investigations. But I do not want to let this block end without talking about who suffers. I mean, the morale at the department at the highest levels of Bill Barr's staff, I understand to be horrible. There have been people that have been preparing for, embracing for sweeping pardons for the president's criminal friends for months. They've watched a real brain drain as prosecutors quit these cases and then slowly and quietly leave the department. You mentioned Nora Dennehy. I want to ask you about her because you make this important point in an op-ed. I'm going to just read a little bit from it, Neil. The resignations are a forceful public signal that something is seriously awry at the Justice Department under Mr. Barr. A hallmark of the department where both of us worked is its tradition of political independence, forged over decades since its creation in 1870. Neither of us, and you write this with Joshua Geltzer, neither of us ever heard of career civil servants resigning because they believed the Attorney General was acting politically. Never. And that's even accounting for the department's strong conservatives and liberals in its career ranks. Just talk about the shockwaves at the department when an attorney general says something like this and then walks back into the building or walks around the courtyard or is seen having maligned and smeared every last one of his employees.
It's incalculable, Nicole. Barr has two fundamental problems. Problem one, he fundamentally doesn't believe in law, even though he's the attorney general and supposedly our chief law enforcement officer. And number two, he doesn't believe in the Justice Department's personnel. And that's why you have folks resigning and demoralized in ways. Morale is at the toilet level. And for him to go and attack someone like Michael Dreeben, who was a career lawyer at the Solicitor General's office, he was my deputy. I have no idea what the guy's politics are, even to this day, and widely seen by everyone as one of the greatest Supreme Court advocates of our generation, is ridiculous. And he does this to all sorts of people at the top and the bottom of the Justice Department. The only way the Justice Department works, because it has very few political appointees, is through the hard work by the career folks, men and women who generally get it right. And for him to do that, to call them nursery school folks and stuff like that is inexcusable. It breaks my heart. And I don't think this man is fit to be Attorney General of the United States. Maybe he's fit to be Attorney General of the Soviet Union. But this is incalculable damage to the department, incalculable damage to the rule of law. I think his legacy is set in stone at this point.
Well, and I just want to end with this other piece from your reporting, Neil. One of the people he called a preschool, arguably, I guess, is Nora Dennehy. She was the deputy to John Durham. She has resigned from that probe because of political pressure to produce a report. And you write that Nora Dennehy poses a looming further threat to Barr. She didn't just withdraw from the investigation. She resigned from the department. That means Mr. Barr can't